The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brooks Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brooks Show on this Friday night. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week and you're ready for the weekend. Saturday tomorrow, you can sleep in. All right. Okay. Thanks for joining me. I figured I'd add a show today. Wife's out of town. Got some spare time. And there's a lot in the news. It's just all these things, all this crap happening in the news. And tomorrow's show is on Dugin. I hope you join me for that one. It should be interesting. It should be fun. We'll tear the bastard apart. And then the show on Sunday is about beauty and art. So we're going from, whoa, Dave, what happened? Oh, he wants me to review the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson. Okay. I can do that. By the way, when I do the review when I do the show on Sunday on beauty and art, I'll also cover some of the, I'll do the reviews of all the songs that I'm still missing. And I know I'm still behind on a TV show, another Star Trek episode. So I've got that as well. And let me add Dave's here. Whoops, why wouldn't I copy? Let me try that again. Let me have Dave's movie review of The Patriot to that list. I thought Dave was just being generous, but no, he wants to put me to work. All right, great. Thank you, Dave. That's terrific. I will watch the movie. I'm pretty sure I saw it years ago, but it will be good. Be good, yeah. Lawrence says, from Dugan to beauty and art is a big contrast. Yes, it is. I figure after a show on Dugan, you guys are gonna need a cleansing, and the show on beauty and art is supposed to provide that cleansing. You know, feel clean again, because it's not going to be pretty. The show. I mean, he's not pretty, and then what he says is particularly unpretty. So there's going to be a lot going on. Catherine can't have the night off just because Dave did 500. Just means the goal should be like 1,000 now, right? So no time off. All right. So we've got a bunch of stuff on the table. We'll talk about the CHIPS Act that is being now passed by the House and Senate, and will be signed by President Biden, I'm sure with a lot of fanfare sometime next week would be my expectation. Then we've got, I love this name, this is such a great name. We've got the Inflation Reduction Act, which is being put together in the Senate right now, which Manchin and Schumer have signed off on, and now we need to wait and see if the rest of the Democrats will support, but it looks like they will. What option do they have? I guess the senator from Arizona is the only one who might stand in the way, but Manchin has supported this. We'll see. We'll talk about why he supported it. Manchin is really crafty, really, really crafty. Anyway, we'll talk about that. Then there's this case of Alzheimer fraud, and since Sinema, that's right, Senator Sinema from Arizona. And then there's the case of Alzheimer fraud, and since I already talked about Alzheimer's just fortuitously, a week or two ago, about all the government spending going into Alzheimer's, and it turning out probably to be a wrong theory, and now they might be at some of its origins, at least some fraud. How significant the fraud is, how important it is, how significant it was for the research, we'll see. Probably hard to tell, but tells you something about the world of science these days. And then finally, a funny, sad, pathetic story from the Netherlands. from Rotterdam. And I know we've got a number of people here who listen from the Netherlands because they got all excited when I talk about the farmers. So maybe they're not listening because I didn't put Netherlands in the title. But we'll talk about Bezos's 500-foot, I think it's actually less than 500 foot, I think it's like 420 feet, sailboat that is being built for him in the Netherlands, and we'll talk about the kind of the pathetic state of that. Yeah. What else? I think that's a lot. So let's jump in. Remind you all that you can ask questions on the super chat. Remind you all that you should like the show before you leave. Remind you all that that you can go on Twitter right now and let the world know that we're live, and maybe try to attract some additional live viewers to the show, so we can get higher numbers. Let's see. All right, cool. So let's get started. So as I said, the Congress has now passed, the Senate and the House. I think I read 24 Republicans voted for this in the Senate. So this is a bipartisan bill. Beware, always beware of bipartisan bills. Whenever the Democrats and Republicans actually agree on something, it's probably bad. It's probably not good for the country. It's probably not good for you. And this is a good example of that. This is a pretty good example of that, and we'll where both Republicans and Democrats have agreed. And of course, they agree because there is a national security threat. And of course, you can't argue with a national security threat. The national security threat is the fact that chips, microprocessors, computer chips, are really, really important for everything, but particularly really, really important for the Defense Department. All sophisticated weapons today, all weapon systems today anyway, from drones to tanks to airplanes, to the computers, to everything. Everything the military does today depends on chips, and some of this stuff depends on some of the most advanced chips in the world. Over the last couple of decades, much of the chip manufacturing has moved to places like Taiwan and South Korea. And much of the innovation in chips, much of the breakthroughs technologically in chips that used to be what the United States, particularly Intel, was really good at. Today, the Taiwanese and the Koreans are pushing the envelope, and we are lagging behind them. And the challenge is, how do we keep a fresh supply of chips for the Defense Department, to make sure that our weapon systems have the latest and best and greatest chips possible. Now, I've got a solution for that. But let's first talk about what is the national security threat. Well, the way it's phrased, there are two aspects to the national security threat. The first is supply chains. While Taiwan and South Korea are friendly countries, they're allies, it's difficult to get the chips over here. You have to fly them, you have to bring them by boat, there are bottlenecks, there are difficulties. One of those countries could have, a pandemic or something, they'd lock it down, and then manufacturing in that country would slow down. Although, of course, Taiwan was never locked down. South Korea was never really locked down. It's America that was locked down. Actually, they did really well, comparatively speaking. Taiwan did phenomenally well, comparatively speaking, with the latest pandemic. We're the ones who screwed it up. Todd, thank you. $100. Todd says, chips. I've owned Intel since early 2009, but this is stupid. And I don't know, you're probably not doing too well with Intel these days. They just reported pretty bleak earnings again. So Intel not doing well the last few years. Although this bill will it'll be really good for Intel. We'll get to that as well. So supply chain issues, how do we get the chips? There have been chip shortages, although I don't know that those shortages have affected the Pentagon. Those shortages were market shortages that resulted from shipping constraints and disruptions to the global supply chain. So even though the Korean and the Taiwanese economies did not shut down, much of what they, chips are not made whole in those places. They get materials from elsewhere. The whole supply chain kind of was broken and everything slowed down. I don't know that the Pentagon was hurt by that. Maybe the Pentagon has priority. Maybe they get the first chips. Maybe they fly them in. Especially, I don't know. I don't know. But that's one of the excuses given. We need the chip manufacturers to be right here in the United States. And they should be American. We can't trust those Taiwanese and the Koreans. They should be American, and they should be here in the United States, and therefore we won't have these supply chain bottlenecks. So that the Pentagon, the story goes, will get its chips just like that. Again, no proof, no suggestions that the Pentagon is having a hard time sourcing chips right now. The second issue that people have raised, mention, and this one is even, they're more adamant around, they're more inspired by, they're more motivated by, is the fact that, well, it's not a fact, is one word. You just say this one word and people quiver, people shake, people are just overcome with fear and apprehension. And that word is China. You just say China and everybody goes, whoa, China. China's subsidizing its chip industry. China is pouring billions of dollars into its chip industry. China is going to dominate the chip industry. China is, and of course China could invade Taiwan and conquer Taiwan and take the chip industry from the Taiwanese. China. Now, yes, China is pouring billions of dollars into a semiconductor industry. China is, as a top strategic priority for the Chinese central planners, is domination of the chip industry. Guess how successful they are? Not very. China has a very small percentage of the worldwide chip manufacturing industry. It is not anywhere near cutting edge. It is anywhere from 5 to 10 years behind the Taiwanese, the Koreans, and even Intel, which is a couple of years behind the Taiwanese and the Koreans. So China is not a threat. The more centrally planned Chinese semiconductor industry becomes, the less of a threat it is. Again, this understanding of what generates innovation, what generates ingenuity, what generates progress, what generates wealth. Freedom, respect for reason, respect for individual innovators. When you see that lacking in a culture, when you see that lacking in a country, you're not going to get innovation there. You're not going to get massive progress. Now, yes, the Chinese can steal. Well, but they haven't been successful in stealing the semiconductor stuff because, again, they're at least 5 years behind. 5 years is a long time in semiconductors, in tech generally. 5 years behind. Remember version of the iPhone 5 years ago? So what are we afraid of? we have this belief. It's ingrained in our politics. It's ingrained in our politicians. And unfortunately, most people in America and in the world believe it. That central planning is better than leaving the market alone. If the markets are left alone, how will we get the right chip? How will it be the right size? How will we get the right technology? I mean, isn't it better if we get somebody really, really, really smart and they figure it out and they subsidize all the best people and they invest in all the smartest guys and then we get the best deal because somebody thought about it and figured it out and mapped it all out? No. It turns out that's not how it works. Maybe the Alzheimer research is a point in case. Case in point, not point in case, case in point. The whole beauty of the market is that private entrepreneurs go out there and they try and they test, they fail, and they try again. The whole idea is venture capitalists invest in some and don't invest in others and try and invest in the best. And if you look at a company like Intel, which is not doing well, and yet Intel is investing $23 billion in R&D next year. This bill, by the way, is going to subsidize the semiconductor industry by about $50 billion over the next few years, 5 years maybe. And Intel is probably going to get half of that. So Intel is already investing $23 billion a year of its owners' money, of its shareholders' money, in trying to figure this out. Now the government's going to give them more, which means Intel, if it had failed, maybe should go out of business so the capital can be allocated to some new entrepreneur who is going to make better chips than Intel. But now, with the government giving the half of the $50 billion that they're going to subsidize the chip industry with to Intel, guess what's going to happen? Intel can't fail. Intel is now secure. Intel doesn't have to worry about failure. Indeed, I would say the energy, the incentive, the passion about going out there and solving the problem is reduced because they're not under that big of a deal threat because the government's bailing them out. Markets are truly amazing things. Yes, failure happens. Now, let's say you are the Defense Department, the Pentagon, and you're worried about chip supplies for national security, real national security. I'm not talking about Trump's national security where the auto industry was deemed strategic for national security. I mean, I think, personally, I am convinced that the Yaron Brooks show is, fundamental and essential for the American national security, actually for global national security. I mean, every government in the world should be sending me money because I'm crucial for their national security, except the Russians maybe, and the Chinese, but and the South Koreans, the North Koreans and the Iranians and the Saudis. Well, all the good countries should be sending me money because I think my show is crucial for national security. I mean, give me a break. But there is national security issues. So what could the Pentagon do? Now, the Pentagon's a big buyer of chips. It could, for example, say, okay, we'll buy from you, Taiwanese company, or we'll buy from you, South Korean company, but we want all the chips made for us to be actually manufactured in the United States. We want you to manufacture them here because we're worried about supply chain. We're worried about what happens if there's a war between North and South Korea, between China and Taiwan. We want the actual manufacturing facility in the United States. That is it. It's all you need. You don't need it to be America-owned. You just need to be in the United States. And you don't need to subsidize that. You're already paying for the chips. You're already a huge customer. Why wouldn't they just do it? So the whole national security issue is a bogus issue. It always is. At 99.9% of the time, when national security concerns are raised around, central planning issues, whether it's trade, subsidies, tariffs, picking winners and losers, which is what the government is going to do now with chips. It is bogus. Funnily enough, we tried to do this in the 1980s. The Reagan administration was worried that American superiority in chip manufacturing was in decline because of the Japanese. I don't know how many of you around were back then, but don't you remember the days where Japan was going to take over the world? Japan was the biggest strategic threat to the United States. Japan was going to become the richest, biggest economy in the world. The United States was in massive decline, and it was all about Japan. So the Reagan administration designed a whole series of, limitations on the quantities that came in, tariffs, all kinds of restrictions, including subsidies and restrictions and everything. And what happened as a result of the United States government intervening in the marketplace on chips? Shockingly, Japan became more dominant in chip manufacturing. The United States started a long decline in chip manufacturing. Japan ultimately was not the winner in this. They gained market share for a while, and then they declined as South Korea. And Taiwan became the dominant. It's not even, I shouldn't even mention the countries, because really it's the companies, but I don't remember the companies, so it's easy to remember the countries. But it's the companies in these countries, the entrepreneurs in these countries, the innovators in these countries that made the appropriate progress, that changed the world. But so dominance in semiconductor moved in the United States to Japan, from Japan ultimately to South Korea and Taiwan, although the United States is still a very big player in chip manufacturing. And you know who isn't a big player in chip manufacturing? China. So I don't know, yesterday when we had the interview with Jim Maroney about happiness, talked about motivation by fear. And notice that politicians almost always use motivation by fear. And you know they're doing something bad when that's how they're motivated. Now, Senator Schumer from New York, also motivated this by positive values. Jobs in New York. So this is just, the whole thing is, it has nothing to do with national security. It has everything to do with the attempt of, people the attempt of some politicians to centrally plan, of economists to centrally plan, to control, to subsidize, to penalize, to basically determine the fate of a particular market. And at the same time, to line the pockets of politicians, providing jobs for the community, helping out the community. Okay, so not line the pockets of politicians, although that usually comes up as well. It's about lining up the votes for those politicians. So tell with the fact that this bill will probably weaken the U.S. economy, tell with the fact that this bill might actually reduce American competitiveness, American company competitiveness in the semiconductor industry. It doesn't matter, because the senators are going to get more votes, because they can inspire people, because at the superficial level, at the level of, economics, in Economics in One Lesson, Hasler talks about the fact that what's interesting about economics, what's important about economics, what matters about economics are not the first level effects, but the second, third, fourth level effects. The first level effect of the government subsidizing an industry is more jobs in that industry. Yay! But what are the second, third, fourth level effects? They're never positive in this kind of scenario. And they always way outweigh the negative, the positives, the increased jobs. So, for example, you're sucking money out of other parts of the economy in order to subsidize this. Who said this is where the money should be flowing? It obviously isn't. You're subsidizing companies that are not doing well. Ultimately, that's at the expense of companies that are doing well. You're giving competitive firepower to companies that don't have them maybe in them anymore. You're distorting, perverting the marketplace. You're shifting people's jobs. You're taking power away from, let's say, a Taiwanese or Korean company that's innovative and power, and you're giving market share to a company like Intel that's not doing that well. The national security issues can be dealt with easily without having to spend it's more than 50 billion. That's just part of the bill. That's just the direct subsidies, but there are also parts of it that are going to grants to the National Science Foundation to give out for research, and there's money to universities, and in other words, a huge push into semiconductor research in the United States at universities and other levels. Massive amounts of waste, massive amounts of, again, just spending the money where it doesn't need to be spent. And yeah, positive results might come of it, but what's the cost? What's the net cost? The net value. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate the $20 value for value. I appreciate that. So the CHIPS Act, which Republicans are hailing and Democrats are hailing and everybody is excited about, everybody's kumbaya and everybody is great. Not good for the U.S. economy, not good for chip manufacturers, not good for technology, long term. Indeed, one of the reasons given, I've read a number of articles on this, one of the reasons given for the fact that the Chinese are behind in chip manufacturing, chip development, is the fact that it's subsidized and controlled and manipulated and centrally planned. That's how you kill an economy. That's how you kill an industry. What we want is to unleash the creative juices of people, productive people in this country. To do that, what you need is to get the government out of the way, not to give the government a giant pot of money and to tell it to go pick the winners and losers and to make investments and to plan our futures for us all. All right, that is the CHIPS Act. On the other hand, not yet passed and not yet finalized, so we don't actually know what is in it yet. I will mention just the fact that American chip industry, in spite of what I said about Intel, is in pretty good shape. Massive investments, huge amount of R&D. Intel is not the only American company, making chips. There's what do you call? Oh God, I had it here a second ago. The other company, the other big company. But anyway, there is somebody on the chat will let us know in a minute. But there are other big players, not IBM. No, not IBM. But there are other big players, and there are also small players, entrepreneurial players. There's significant investment in new technologies. AMD, thank you, Todd. AMD is the other big player in the American semiconductor market. But there are plenty of others who are working on designing, on manufacturing, on making, on building, on being more efficient, on making more profits, of exactly what you'd expect. And this is one of the most dynamic areas in the world. This is an area that has been free of government regulation, government intervention, government control, and therefore has thrived. Why are you messing with that? Why are you screwing with it? That's the real question. All right, let's move on to a bill that has not yet passed, that has just been proposed, that we still don't know if it will pass the Senate, because it literally requires every Democratic senator to vote for it, because it's pretty sure that no Republicans will vote for it. This just proves that while all bipartisan bills, almost all bipartisan bills are bad, almost all partisan bills are bad too, particularly ones initiated by the Democrats. So here we've got a bill that was the Build Back Better, the BBB, which is, people are listing other semiconductor companies. Yeah, Texas Instruments makes semiconductors, that's right. I forgot about Texas. Used to be massive in the 1980s. A lot of innovation came out of TI. But the Build Back Better seemed dead. You remember Build Back Better originally was proposed at $4 trillion? $4 trillion? I mean, the numbers that these people throw around, a billionaire here and a billion there. Why is nobody throwing a billion at me? I mean, you know how much we could do with a billion? You know how much we could do to change the world with a billion? I promise to spend the entire billion on changing the world. We could accelerate the takeover of the world by laissez-faire capitalism by decades if we had $1 billion right now. Nobody's giving me $1 billion though. So, but if you think about what government does, it's 10 billion here, 20 billion there, 100 billion there. It's just, the numbers are just staggering. Anyway, Build Back Better went from 4 trillion to then 2 trillion to then 1 trillion, and then basically Senator Manchin, the Democrat senator from it was from West Virginia, basically said, nah, all of these bills are too big, too much spending. I'm not going to support it. I'm against it, and he shut it down. And just in the last couple of days, Manchin has been dragged into some cave or some office or some smoke-filled room. His fingernails are being extracted. His wrists are being twisted. His hair is being pulled. Clips are being placed on I don't know what. And he has changed his mind. Now, he hasn't changed his mind to the extent that he is now supporting the 4 trillion, 2 trillion, or 1 trillion bills. It's only to the extent now that he is willing to do something. Exactly how big this bill will be is hard to tell. It involves a number of different components. Let's see, I have a chart here with the different components of it. Where's that chart? Yeah, it has a healthcare component. They're going to reduce drug costs. You should be really happy to reduce drug costs. They're also going to increase tax collection. And they have a new tax, a new corporate tax. And then that's 2 sections, healthcare and taxes. Then they have a whole section on climate and energy. And then they've got money spent, a significant amount of money. This is the one that really scares me. Of all of these bills, the thing that scares me the most is the money allocated in the Inflation Reduction Bill to growing the IRS. They are going to grow the IRS. They're going to dramatically spend more on tax collection because they believe that you guys are not paying everything that you owe. And you're cheating. And as a consequence, they think that if they increase enforcement, that they can generate more revenue for the government. So they dramatically increase the number of, I don't want to insult the IRS because I don't want them to come after me. And even though I haven't done anything wrong, I don't want them to come after me. So I'll just say that these people are nuts if they think that throwing money at the IRS is going to actually increase revenue. It doesn't work that way. But they've got $300 billion of deficit reduction. And the climate change is not just climate change, it's a bunch of other stuff. So let's go over this bill a little bit. Let's try to see what they are doing. There we go. All right. So there is a healthcare section. The healthcare section basically has, they're going to repeal a a drug rebate rule, where I guess the government rebates a certain amount of drugs. They say, right? These are all government estimates, very accurate. Accountants at the government are super accurate. They never miss by a factor of 10 or 100. Never, ever. In your dreams. So we've got a repeal of the drug rebate. We've got savings from an inflation cap on drug prices. So you won't be able to increase your drug prices, you private, greedy, capitalist, a drug manufacturer. We're going to limit your increases. And then we are going to have Medicare, which is the largest drug buyer in the United States, maybe in the world, I don't know, negotiate prices. So then they negotiate. They're going to be able to push the drug manufacturers cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because you gotta fulfill Medicare. You gotta play by Medicare's rules. So they're going to squeeze every ounce of profit they can out of the drug companies. They're going to make drugs go through the roof, the price of drugs, through the roof, that are sold to us through private insurance. Those prices are going to get, because they have to compensate for all the losses that are going to be generated from Medicare. They're going to have to compensate for the losses from, it's unbelievable to me. I have to calm down a second. It truly is unbelievable to me. Here you have an industry, and I know the drug industry is not exactly popular among conservatives and libertarians. Luckily, I'm not a conservative or libertarian, so I don't care. But here you have an industry that is working to develop life-saving drugs. You have an industry that is involved in massive innovations, and if it doesn't do the innovations themselves, they provide the capital for biotech companies that they buy to do the innovations. But this is an industry that has the potential and is likely to save billions of lives, certainly millions, hundreds of millions. This is one of the most virtuous industries there is. And it's an industry who plows their profits into research and development. If you look at the profitability of big pharma, it's not that profitable. It's as profitable as any other industry. And the reason, and it takes its profits and it plows them into research and development. So, second to the US government, the largest sector that invests in research and development is, actually it's not second to, I think it's larger than the US government, is the pharmaceutical industry. So we're going to save costs. We're going to save costs so that Mnuchin and these other guys can have all kinds of goodies. So the way to save costs is we're going to restrain the profitability of drug companies. We're going to limit how much money they can make. We're going to squeeze them for every last dime. And the fact that that's going to reduce research and development into the future, that's a future who can predict. And the fact that that is going to reduce drug development, innovation, progress, life-saving drugs, who cares? The main thing is, Mnuchin is saying to himself, the main thing is we lowered healthcare costs at the expense of human life, at the expense of future innovation. It's just disgusting. The IRS is expecting to increase tax collection by $204 billion because of this bill, because it's getting, $80 billion to invest, and it's generating $204 billion in outcome. Does anybody actually believe these numbers? I don't. Then there's a 15% corporate minimum tax. Again, they're assuming that they're going to get a huge amount of money from this. I don't understand from where or how, given that $315 billion. Given the corporate taxes, they already exist, who is the extra that they're going to tax you. Of course, if you tax corporations, that means they have less to pay out as dividends. That means there's less capital gains, so that there's less taxed over there. The corporate tax is the dumbest tax of all. All this new 15% corporate minimum tax is going to do is increase prices and lower wages. Increase prices and lower wages. That's what increasing the corporate tax is always. It's actually not prices, it's prices, but it's also wages. What else are they going to do? We said $300 billion of deficit reduction, so they're going to take money from one pocket and put it into another pocket. And all of this, for what? To spend on climate change. So let's look more closely at what they're going to do for climate change. Let me just see how I can, what is this? Oh, first of all, just to close out on healthcare, they can extend the subsidies on Obamacare, subsidies that go to pay for the insurance whose prices went up because of Obamacare. So now you need a subsidy in order to actually afford it. The subsidy was supposed to be sunset because you're supposed to not need it because Obamacare was supposed to keep insurance prices low. It was going to lower insurance prices so everybody could afford it. But it's done the opposite, so now we need to extend the subsidies. Guess what? This is, yes, I mean, this is just the absurdities, right? They couldn't project it right when Obamacare passed. Why would any projection they give you now, any projection for cost savings, for deficit reduction, for any of these things, why would it even register as data? It's made up numbers. It's sticking, your finger into the wind and saying, 300. Let's make it 300. I think we can reduce the deficit by 300. And how much will the IRS raise if we give them X amount of money? I don't know. How about 215 billion? Let's just do that. It's complete bullshit numbers. There is zero economics behind this. The first time government estimated, I think it was 1968, they estimated the cost of Medicare 10 years in the future. By what factor do you think they got it wrong? So let's say they said it would be 100. What do you think it was? A factor of 2? Was it 200? Did it cost 200 instead of 100? Did it cost 10x? Did it cost 1,000 instead of 100? What do you think? What was your estimate of how they underestimating the true cost of Medicare in 1968 when it passed? Same Congressional Budget Office, same kind of economists, the same finger up in the air figuring out. By what factor did they miss? So 100 turned into 1,000? No. They missed by a factor of 100. So 100 turned into 10,000. So for every $100 they predicted Medicare would cost, it actually cost 10,000. Why does anybody believe any number these guys ever produce? All right, they're also going to redesign Medicare Part D. Doesn't sound good. But then I don't know, the Medicare Part D is already good. All right, let's look at the crux of this, the climate change initiatives. All right, we're going to get new clean manufacturing tax credits. Yay. We're going to get clean electricity grants and loans. Some of it, by the way, to utilities that have nuclear power plants to keep them going. So at least they recognize that nuclear is clean. But most of it to the usual suspects, more solar, more wind, more nonsense. A new clean energy technology accelerator. How much money is that? How much? Ooh, how cool is this? 30 billion. 30 billion to new clean energy technology accelerator. There is no end to how much our politicians really want to be venture capitalists. And they want to get into financing technology because, Silicon Valley and tech companies and venture capitalists have just done such a lousy job at it. We need the government to step in and save us all from just the horror of privately funding technology. So we need a new energy technology accelerator. I wonder how they're going to decide who to fund and who not. I wonder how much of that $30 billion will go to nuclear or fusion, or how much of it will go to politicians' pet favorites in New York, because Schumer is key. Some of this is going to go for funds for clean agriculture. I guess that's more ethanol subsidies. I guess that's just farm subsidies. I mean, politicians love farm subsidies. There are a lot of voters in the Midwest. They love farm subsidies. And then funds, again, not enough electric vehicle manufacturing. Ford is not investing enough. GM is not investing enough. Tesla's not investing enough. Hyundai and Kia and Toyota are not investing enough. So the government is going to put a fund of $20 billion to play winners and losers on the EV, in the EV market. Now, one of the things they had to do for Mnuchin is, part of this bill is the freeing up of drilling, so the freeing on government land in Alaska. So he's getting a little bit there. He's getting money that is ultimately going to benefit coal. Some of this, I think some of this clean electricity grants and loans is somehow going to fund and going to help the coal industry. And indeed, one of the big coal companies was a strong lobbyist for this bill, because in spite of the fact that a lot of money is going to solar and wind, a bunch of it is going to subsidize coal. And of course, the Greens are going to look the other way, because what they, okay, so we'll give Mnuchin a little bit of coal. We get those solar panels. How cool is that? So there's let's see, some of the things in this. There's a methane fee. There's going to be now a fee for producing methane. It's going to go up. Right now, you have to pay a fee to produce methane. And it's going to go up beyond 750 per metric ton to 900, and then 1,500 by 2026. Methane is this, it's a really bad, in quotes, gas that contributes supposedly to climate change. We're going to get significant increases in drilling on public lands. We're promised. Although the royalty rate, it looks like, is going to go up, although it's going to be capped. We're going to have some new leases on offshore. So there's quite a bit of new drilling here. So this is what Mnuchin pressed, is that oil and gas get its big. A lot of offshore wind. We're going to get offshore wind. They're going to overturn Trump's 10-year moratorium on offshore wind leases. They're going to build a ton of offshore winds in Puerto Rico, I guess. Huh. All right, Puerto Rico. We're going to get some offshore windmills. Guam, American Samoa, and U.S. Virgin Islands, but also, I guess, off the coasts. There's going to be $60 billion. 60 billion for environmental justice. Environmental justice. Because the environment is very unjust. So, God, what a concept, environmental justice is something you can only apply to human beings. You can't have environmental justice. So $3 million, million. I'm so 1980s. $3 billion block grants for frontline communities. Frontline communities? I don't know, communities that have bad weather, communities that have built themselves in flood zones, communities maybe close to hurricane zones. I don't know. $3 billion for port air pollution reduction grants. So the ports are going to get money to reduce air pollution. $1 billion is going to go to clean heavy-duty vehicles, such as school buses and garbage trucks. Garbage trucks are going to get clean. How cool is that? And by the way, the U.S. Postal Service, one of the most inefficient, unproductive entities on the planet, is going to get $3 billion to changing its fleet of vehicles to zero emissions. $27 billion, greenhouse gas reduction fund, which will be basically a federal green bank, and dole out $8 billion for projects in low-income and disadvantaged communities. So that's environmental justice for you. Black lung funding, there's no number here for that, but that's to help out, again, the coal industry. It's the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund that is set up to pay for liability that coal companies had towards some of the employees. So there's a tax that funds these benefits. It expired last year, and anyway, we're going to be electrifying homes. I thought homes in the United States were already electrified. Huh. Well, they're going to give them $9 billion in rebates. Rebates. I guess if they go, I don't know, solar or something. We're going to $500 million to deploy the Defense Production Act to help build out domestic manufacturing of heat pumps. Because we don't have enough heat pumps in America, it turns out. Capitalism did not produce enough heat pumps. So we need the defense product. And you can go on and on. Oh, we're going to plant a lot of trees. And by the way, we're going to spend billions of dollars on drought and drinking water and an endangered species. But we're not going to build any desalination plants. Can't do that. Can't do that. Anyway, you can see this is just an absurd, ridiculous, just like the CHIP Act. And by the way, Congress is hailing itself as this incredibly productive Congress. They gave us the bailout bill when Biden was first elected that got us 9.2% inflation, among many other things. It's now giving us these two bills that are going to increase central planning, increase government intervention in the economy, subsidize, well, I was going to say subsidize all the wrong things, but you never subsidize the right things. There's no such thing. Just a series of disasters that are just going to cripple this country just a little bit more, just going to make us a little weaker, just going to make the U.S. economy a little slower. Horrible. All right, let's do some questions, and then we'll do the final two. Final two items are pretty quick. All right, let's start with Todd at $100. Thank you, Todd. Cronyism, stupid energy policy, and higher taxes. What could be better? More cronyism, more of it. Right? So yes, we're on a roll here with this Congress in doing these kind of things. It's truly amazing. Todd also says, isn't 100% of your income your fair share? You would think, but the government takes 50 plus, if you count sales taxes and everything else. 60% of your income is 60% of your income is gone on taxes. So I guess your fair share is whatever's left. That's how the government defines fair share. And finally, Todd says, like I said, cronyism and bad energy policy. Thank you, Todd. That was 1, 2, 300, and then 100 earlier, $400 in a row. We're over $1,000. So thank you, Todd and Dave and that Doodle Bunny and all the other super chatters. So let's jump to that Doodle Bunny for $50. Should you be allowed to pay off victims? I knew someone who drove drunk and hit a pedestrian. The driver was well off and essentially paid the person to drop the charges. Is this a corruption of the justice system? If you can just buy your way out. There certainly should be types of felonies that you can't do that. Types of felonies that the state should prosecute you for. So if you're drunk driving is not, if you hit somebody, then their claim against you, you can buy them out. But the state should still prosecute you for drunk driving, for endangerment, for whatever it is. Because, you can get arrested for drunk driving even if you don't hit anybody. Right? So, certainly felonies are brought, charges for felonies are brought by the state, not by, libertarians want all criminal law to be civil law. That is, you have to be sued. So the person you hit sues you, and you pay them off, and that's fine. No, I believe that criminal law, that's why you need a state. One of the reasons you need a state is you need a criminal law system where there's an objective standard of what constitutes you being a threat, you being a criminal, and therefore being prosecuted by the state, not just by the person who's complaining about you. So absolutely, I agree with you, Doodle Bunny. All right, Jeff says, nitrogen. In a modern plant, nitrogen fertilizer is produced from natural gas. In several transformation steps, natural gas, essentially methane, is upgraded by combination with nitrogen from the air to form nitrogen fertilizer. Kill farmers. Yeah, so what you're saying is, to the extent that we make methane more and more expensive, we make it impossible to produce fertilizer. If we make it impossible to use fertilizer, well, we saw what happened in Sri Lanka. You basically kill farming. And it's not about killing farming. It's about killing all of us. Because basically you get to a state where you can't produce enough food for humanity. Without fertilizer, there is not enough food for human beings. What makes it possible for us to produce enough food for human beings today is what's called the Green Revolution, which is to a large extent the fertilizer revolution, which brought about a massive boom, massive increase in food production and in food productivity. That is, the ability to produce large quantities of food on smaller and smaller plots of land. Yes, thank you, Jeff. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, this is what they're ultimately after. What they're ultimately after is death and destruction. What they're ultimately after is the farmers, the eaters. What they're after is human beings. What they're after is the destruction. Now, I don't think the politicians even know what they're after. The politicians just after more power, more control, more centrally planning, and more jobs for New York, right? More chest thumping so that they can get more votes. But the consequence of what they're doing, and some people know this, the more intellectual of them know this, is destruction. This CHIPS bill, these bills to subsidize science and energy and electricity and all these things, the ultimate consequence of all this is destruction. Destruction of this country, of our ability to grow, be rich, be successful, have jobs at all, have good food. All right. Thank you, Jeff, also for the 50 Canadian dollars. Let's jump to Michael. Michael says, are Israelis happier than Americans overall because they're less emotionally repressed and have less barriers to entry when it comes to making friendships and romantic partners? Israel seems very inclusive. I don't know. I don't know how you measure happiness. It's very difficult to do, particularly in a world with mixed philosophy like we have, where I think very few people are truly, fully happy, or happy, since happiness can happen on a scale, fully happy. I think generally Israelis are probably a little happier, but they're also more stressed and more anxious and more, generally intense. But they are less repressed emotionally, no question about that. They're also more optimistic. They have a much more positive view about the future, which I think is crucial to happiness. And I talked about this in Iran's Rules for Life, is to have a positive attitude about the future, have a positive attitude about your own life and about the world in which you live, the fact that things will be better in the future. So I do think Israelis have that. They have more kids as a consequence. I think of that more greater positivism and maybe the fact that they're generally happier. I think kids are, not for an individual, but for a society on kind of as an aggregate, on average, fewer kids means cultural pessimism, more kids means cultural optimism. And I think Israel's the most optimistic country right now in the Western world, which is bizarre given that everybody in its neighborhood ultimately wants to kill him. But they've succeeded. In spite of everybody wanting to kill him, they've won. They thrive. They've beaten all their enemies. And every time the enemy comes after them, they beat them back again. So Israel has gotten past this fear, this idea of we're going to be destroyed. And it has a certain confidence that we can and we will win. And we can and we will become rich. And we are becoming rich. Now, they've got problems. I don't want to make Israel into utopia because it's far from that. They've got a lot of problems. And that's why they're not that happy, because there's a lot of religion. There's a lot of, socialism like there is here, government intervention in the economy. There's awful foreign policy challenges. The occupation of the West Bank is not a good thing. The relationship with Gaza Strip is not a good thing. So they've got a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And Israeli society struggles and suffers because of those issues and problems. They could be in a lot better off. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the support and thank you for the question. All right, let's do these final two issues, and then we'll go back to the super chat. We've got a few more questions at the $2 to $10 level. And if anybody wants to ask more questions, feel free. There's no limit to how much we can raise using Super Chat. There should be no limit, and there is no limit. So feel free to jump in. All right, let's see. Alzheimer fraud. I don't know if you've been reading about this, but it's funny because a few weeks ago I did a show where we talked about Alzheimer research and the fact that Alzheimer research was captured relatively early on by people who had a particular theory about what caused Alzheimer, amyloid deposits, and they restricted funding, they restricted publication, they restricted conference presentation for people who offered alternative theories and alternative research paths. This is part of the problem of having so much scientific research come from the government, get pushed through some kind of centralized entity that a few people can control it all. Turns out that amyloid deposits is probably not the right approach to Alzheimer's. We're probably 20 years behind where we should be if we'd focused on other things. It turns out that one of the key papers that generated the amyloid hypothesis, or that reinforced the amyloid hypothesis and that got people excited about it and that funneled so much energy and resources and money into it, it turns out that some of the images on it, the images that showed amyloid deposits in the brain, were doctored. Were doctored to make it look worse than it was. They're doctored to make it look like something was there when maybe it was still there, but weaker. And now there's a massive scandal within medicine, within the research community, within the publications, about how did this happen, how is this allowed to happen, how is it, and it's been discovered because somebody did an analysis of these images and discovered that something's off, something's not right. And think of the tragedy of something like this. The whole field has gone off in a wrong direction for, study was probably 16 years ago, for 16 years. This is one of the most debilitating, horrible diseases that are known to man today. It's an awful way to live, it's an awful way to die. And we could have been years, decades ahead of where we are if the resources and the energy had gone into these alternative explanations. Maybe they would have come to nothing. But we'd be ahead in our knowledge, because ruling out certain hypotheses advances knowledge. So I'm super upset about this, but this is part of the whole model of the way we've structured scientific funding, the way we've structured our universities, the way we've structured publish or perish, the way we've structured our journals and the importance we put on on journals and the way peer review works and the value of peer review or the disvalue of some peer review. Real thought and effort needs to be put into how to disrupt the whole model of academic research. And the problem is it's very difficult to disrupt a model that's being funded with tens, hundreds of billions of dollars by the government. So hard to tell, but it needs to be disrupted. The whole, from basic research to publication to tenure to journals, something has to give. There's real corruption there. There's real bad stuff there. The COVID brought it out with just, ridiculous statements and publications on all sides. And the peer review process fell apart, and who is a specialist, the idea fell apart. We could do better. There's no question in my mind. It can be done better. Right? And there are other research questions. The whole fat paradigm, that fat is bad for you, that for years dominated and was based on certain research, and it turns out the research is flawed, and it turns out again that alternatives, even to this day within mainstream medicine, alternatives are shunned. People don't want to talk about it. People won't publish on it. People won't fund the research on it. There's got to be a way to privatize all that and to create competition around it, create pride around it, so that people don't feel like they have to doctor pictures or publish or perish, literally. It's way too hard. It's way, way, way too hard. There's so much money. There's so much talent. And we're getting a fraction of the results we should be getting. A fraction. Given the potential that's out there, given the money, primarily given the people, given the talent that is involved. All right, that was quickly on the Alzheimer's. I thought I'd mention it just because we talked about it. I closed that? Why did I close it? All right, so here's a kind of a funny, sad story about Bezos. So Bezos is building a yacht, a luxury yacht. It's a sailboat. I think it's 420 feet long, which is, it's hard to imagine how big a 420 feet long yacht is, but that's a big yacht. I was once I spent a weekend on a 150-foot yacht. Wow. It was luxurious and beautiful and amazing. We literally landed on the deck in a helicopter. We landed on the yacht. So I can't even imagine what a 417-foot, which is what Jeff Bezos' yacht is going to be, 417-foot sailing yacht is going to be. I mean, it's truly an amazing ship, an amazing boat. It's a lot of fun. It's costing him $500 million, which is, I guess, not that lot of money for somebody worth over $100 billion. Anyway, this yacht is being built in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, by a company that specializes in shipbuilding, and particularly it's called Oceanco. It's a company that I think specializes in building luxury yachts. And the problem is that because it has these very high sails, in order to get from where it's being built to the open ocean, it's got to go through these canals in Rotterdam, and there's a bridge. And the bridge is 230 feet tall at its highest bridge. It's called the Hef, which is this bridge. It's 230 feet tall at that point. But that's not tall enough to let Bezos' boat go under. So Bezos, well, not Bezos, but Oceanco, a company based in the Netherlands, approached the city of Rotterdam and said, look, we will pay to have the bridge dismantled so the boat can go under it, and then we'll rebuild it just the way it was, maybe even better. Now, what's interesting about this bridge is it's not in use. It was a bridge built a long time ago for rail transport, right? I'm trying to find a picture of the bridge because it's a pretty ugly bridge. Oh, there it is. Okay, let me show you a picture of it. Let's see if I can show you a picture of this. You're going to have to give me a second, and I'll show you a picture. Where is it? I think that's it. Okay, can you see the picture? Hopefully you can all see the picture. Let me just move it so you can, I'm not in the middle of it. There's the bridge, right? It's a pretty ugly bridge, but you can see it's got a big span in the middle where the ship should be, where the yacht should be able to come, but it's just not high enough. And you can see that it seems like it wouldn't be that complicated to take off just that middle part, let the yacht go and put it back on. And all at the cost of Ocean Co., I assume at the cost of Jeff Bezos. And initially, the city council said yes. And then the citizens of Rotterdam freaked out. They freaked out. You're going to dismantle the bridge? This is the bridge. This is the symbol of our country. This, by the way, this was a railroad bridge. It's not being used anymore. The railroad does not run there anymore. It's just there. It's become kind of a symbol of Rotterdam, right? And you're going to do this for the sake of a billionaire? For the sake of a billionaire's yacht? How dare you? And the citizens have riled up. They got all excited. And they put pressure on the city council, withdrawn their acceptance of the proposal. Now remember, this is not going to cost the city a dime. It's not going to cost these people a dime. They're going to put it back just the way it was. But they're not going to be inconvenienced. It's not going to cost them anything. It's not like this is a working bridge and now the trains won't be able to pass, or the people won't be able to pass, or the cars won't be able to pass. No, 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 no. It's the principle. How dare a billionaire ask us to do this? The citizens of Rotterdam are already preparing for when the boat passes here. It probably won't pass with the sail because they'll have to put the sail on after it passes somehow, right? So they'll have to find a different way to do it. But they're going to throw tomatoes at it. They're going to throw eggs at it. They hate this boat. As they say, one of these residents that got very upset about this said, there's a principle at stake. What can you buy if you have unlimited cash? Can you bend every rule? Can you take apart monuments? Why not? I mean, notice how this is fueled completely fueled by envy, completely fueled by hatred. So I did a kind of a positive story in the Netherlands about the what do you call it, the farmers. I figured I'd give you a little bit of balance. Holland is a place where there are a lot of rich people. Holland became very, very rich in the 17th century, and a lot of wealth in Holland is old wealth, but there are also entrepreneurs in Holland that have made a lot of money. There's very, very wealthy people. Indeed, of all the countries in Europe, Holland is one of the countries that has the largest inequality. You know, I don't care about inequality, but just so you know, it's got huge inequality. But this is the thing about Holland, very similar to Scandinavia. It's okay to be rich. It's okay to be rich. Don't flaunt it. Don't drive a nice car. Don't have a big yacht. Don't wear big, expensive jewelry. Don't flaunt it. This is a society shaped by a Calvinist approach to, you know, you're a steward of your money. God made this possible for you. You've got to take care of it. You've got to be generous with other people. And of course, Holland is no longer religious, it's quite secular, but that mentality of egalitarianism, of everybody being the same, of everybody dressing the same, everybody looking the same, everybody having the same amount of appearance in terms of wealth, even though everybody knows that they're not the same. So they despise the idea that Bezos has a boat, a big boat. They don't want to see it. They don't want to know about it. They certainly don't want the bridge to be taken apart so that it could be brought into the ocean. They don't want to have anything to do with it. Indeed, they want to protest it. This is envy. This is hatred of success for the sake of hatred. There's nothing to be gained. There's no value. There's no positive here. There's all negative. It's, as Paul says in the chat, it's a bridge to nowhere. There's no value they're trying to protect here. It's an ugly bridge. They, by the way, have a beautiful bridge in Rotterdam. Look at this. I'll show you another picture. Let's see. No, not that one. That one. Look at this bridge. That's a beautiful bridge. Yeah, I'd be upset if that was closed. It's a major thoroughfare. I've driven on that bridge. It's a major entry point into Rotterdam. It's gorgeous. I love that bridge. The other one's ugly. Who cares? They should tear it down permanently. It's a national monument. You can't touch it. It's like historical or whatever. They preserved it. It's like people live in the past, hate progress, hate success, but more than they hate success, they hate the successful. And they hate the idea of consumption, of a lot. You know, they tell a story. This is a New York Times story about this, where this Dutch person says, let me find this for you. Yeah, I mean, as the story says, Netherlands has billionaires, huge pay gap, huge inequality. But it's this Protestant mentality, secularized into envy. Right? Secularized into envy. It's not even like, anyway, what was the story? Yeah, she told this story about, they had an exchange student at their home. She's in the Netherlands, an American exchange student at their home. And the mother told the kid, you know, you can prepare your own sandwich. And when when they prepared their sandwiches, they like put one sausage in the sandwich, and that was what they ate for lunch. And the American kid, when he prepared his sandwich, put 5 sausages in there. And it was like, what do you need 5 sausages for? Nobody eats 5 sausages. Now, they didn't say anything to him because they're polite. But that's what they thought. They rolled their eyes. They thought it was absurd. This conspicuous consumption. They're very against that. Like if you go to the Netherlands, I live pretty good. But there's this mentality. And it's the kind of mentality that you know, the hatred of success, the hatred of conspicuous success, which kills culture, kills cultures. You know. And Amsterdam used to be the greatest city in the world. Certainly in the 17th century, it was probably the best city in the world to be in. All right, let's go back to your Super Chat questions. We don't have any additional ones, so we'll just cover the ones we have and roll with it. So, but if you want to ask more questions, you certainly can. All right, Liam asks, is it evasion not to focus on ugliness? No, I mean, evasion is not treating everything equally. Evasion doesn't mean focusing everything the same. It means focusing on what your values are, focusing on what's important to you and what's important in life, focusing on how to achieve the values. It's focus with a purpose. So it's not egalitarian focus. Oh, there's an ugly person, there's something really ugly, there's something really beautiful. If I don't, not evading means I should focus on them equally. No. Focus requires you to recognize ugliness when it's ugly, recognize beauty when it's beautiful, and enjoy the beauty and spend more time on the beauty because that contributes more to your life. Let's see, Hopper Campbell. Could you do a show on Justin Trudeau? Having studied and analyzed him, I think the guy's a sociopath. I doubt he's a sociopath. My guess he's just a committed altruist, statist socialist. So, I mean, he's a committed leftist. Not everybody you disagree with, or not everybody who's got really, really rotten ideas is a sociopath. But yeah, I mean, I can look into him. I think, yeah, this is a good time to mention. If you want me to do a particular topic, you can sponsor a show. Sponsorship of a show is $1,000 for a show. Last show that was sponsored was the one on the right to, what was it? The right to repair. Right to repair. But you can sponsor. I'm eagerly. You know, it's great when I get a sponsored show. It gives me a topic for a show. It's something you guys are interested in. And also, it's great revenues for the show. You know, we're still not quite where I want us to be in terms of the amount of revenue generated by the show, by the Yaron Brook Show. But sponsorships are one way that really gets accelerated. So if anybody's interested, if anybody's passionate about a particular topic, wants me to do a particular topic, it requires me to do research. It requires a significant amount of time. $1,000 is, I think, a pretty reasonable amount. Yeah. All right. Running Gap, OLO TV. No idea what that means. What do you think about the spread of cynicism in the culture, and what is the cause of it? Oh, I think it's horrible. And cynicism has been spreading in the culture for 30, 40 years. It's been growing. It's not surprising given a culture. We have a culture that does not believe in truth. We live in a postmodern world where everybody has their own truth. There's no absolute truth. We live in a culture in which nobility and virtue and morality are undermined by kind of a complete subjectivity and a postmodern type attitude, or where all of that is undermined by religion, which tells you that heroism and morality and virtue are all about sacrifice. And even if you're heroic, don't think too much of yourself. So altruism brings about cynicism. And the more we take altruism seriously, the more cynical we can, because cynicism is like the approach that says, well, goodness can't exist. I mean, implicitly, that's what it suggests. Goodness can't exist. And if you're an altruist, if you take it seriously, if you believe that altruism, that nobility and virtue require sacrifice and giving up on yourself and giving up your values, then almost nobody is altruistic like that. Nobody lives it. They're altruistic in other ways, guilt but really acting altruistically, nobody is. So they are no heroes. I mean, maybe superheroes. They can, Superman can afford to sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice. Even Batman gave up in the trilogy, right? At the end, gave up on the sacrifice. Decided they didn't deserve his heroism. But Iron Man is a cynic because he's not a true hero, because he's not a true sacrificer. So altruism makes it impossible to actually, be heroic, be moral, be successful, live a good life. Altruism undermines and undercuts that. And that results in people giving up, and cynicism is them giving up. James asks, do you agree with Michael Scott when he says great bosses don't fire people, they hire people, they inspire people? Well, I certainly think that the main job of a great boss, or it's the hiring and inspiring is more important than the firing, but you still have to fire. So I think great bosses don't fire people. Well, some people need firing. So I don't think you can inspire everybody. I don't think you can make every employee into a great employee. Now, it's true that the better you are at hiring, the less need there is to fire. But everybody makes mistakes, so you have to be willing to fire. So, and then I know great bosses whose whole point is to come into companies and restructure them, and part of that restructuring is to fire the people because you're inheriting people that somebody else hired. So you need to hire your own people. Right? So I think that's a great sentiment in the sense that hiring and inspiring is the more important part. But I think rejecting hiring, don't fire, or rejecting firing, great bosses don't fire, is just wrong. Okay, Michael, I guess this is the last question we have. If you want to squeeze in a question, now's your chance. Peter Schiff's father died sick and blind in prison. That's right. Just for tax theft evasion. The state refused to let him out on compassionate release while they released all the other thugs. Unbelievable. Yes. And, Peter Schiff's father did it on purpose. It wasn't like he was trying to save money and because of that, he got caught. No, he just didn't pay taxes, knowing that he was going to go to jail. Now, that doesn't make sense. That's like being an altruist. It's sacrifice for a cause. And you die blind in jail, sick and blind in jail, for what? What did you achieve? That's a misapplication of principle. It's a misapplication of integrity. And it's sad. It's sad to see. All right, Thomas came in with a last-minute question. Did you see in Barry Weiss's Substack new roundup that the abortion decision and revisiting gay marriage is hurting Republican fundraising, and the Dems now have a good chance of retaining their Senate? Yeah, I think it's more complicated than she makes it out to be in the thing. Democrats do have a good chance of maintaining their control of the Senate. They even have a chance of increasing their control of the Senate in the midterm elections. Part of that is the Republicans are really struggling with fundraising. What's interesting is that the Republicans that are most struggling in terms of polls and in terms of fundraising are the Trump-endorsed candidates. The Trump candidates have won the Republican primaries, like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania and what's his name, Walker in Georgia. They won the Republican primaries because J.D. Vance in Ohio, and we'll see what happened to Blake Masters in Colorado, in Arizona. But they win the Republican primaries, but then they fall behind the Democrat, partially because people don't want Trump, and they don't want people affiliated with Trump. They didn't like Trump, and they didn't like his attitude, and they didn't like some of what he did. And because of, I think also because of abortion and gay marriage, I think are going to be issues. But I think that the Trumpiness of the candidates, the populism that they are inspiring is a bigger issue. And Republicans might lose a seat. They might win the Senate. They still have a chance, right? It's still very early, right? We're still not, we've got September, we've got August, September, October, 3.5 months before the election. So, or 3 months before the election. So there's still plenty of time. But they were going to sweep in. They were going to take the Senate strong, take the House by huge margins, which they probably still will. But the Senate is going to be difficult because of how many of the Republican candidates are Trumpists. And Trumpism is a winning strategy within the Republican Party, but not outside of it. Jeffrey says, have you watched Succession? Good writing, very funny, really good acting, but there's nothing but miserable people fighting for power, nothing close to a hero. Yeah, that's why I haven't watched it. And I'm probably not going to watch it. I'm really enjoying The Old Man that I told you guys about, this thriller, suspense movie. It keeps having surprises that are interesting. I'm excited about the next show. I want to know what happens, which doesn't always happen. And I love just the way it's made. I love the dialogue. The writing is super sharp and smart and interesting. Wow, super chat questions are suddenly flowing in. I thought I was done for the night. So I recommend that, but I just can't bring myself to watch Succession because I know that it's all about horrible people. Thanks, Jeffrey. Ashton is back with $50. Yaron, what is the objectivist viewpoint on the importance of learning history? Huge. Huge. Objectivism believes that all knowledge ultimately is inductive knowledge. You learn from observation, from the facts of reality. So the more you know about reality, present and past, the more solid your knowledge is. So how can you understand politics? How can you understand, geopolitics, foreign policy? How can you understand even economics without knowing history? I think history is one of the most important subjects there is. It is, in many respects, it's more important than philosophy for the common person, because philosophy is very abstract and very difficult, and often people don't know how to apply it to their own lives. But history is, anybody can understand it, and they can actually induce from it. They can see what happened in the Soviet Union, what happened in China, what happened to Stalin, to Hitler, what happened in authoritarian regimes in the past. Oh, wow, looks like authoritarianism doesn't work. Even without having a philosophical understanding of why, they can get it. And then they can ask the question why. And then when they get an answer to the question why, it's much more understandable to them because they have the context. Context is everything when it comes to knowledge. So you need lots of examples, lots of knowledge of the facts of reality. And history is a big chunk of reality. It's like everything that exists today multiplied by 10,000 years. So, and it's amazing. American culture is particularly ignorant of history, and it's devastating for the American people. They have no clue. They don't understand geopolitics. They don't understand their own world. They don't understand economics. To a large extent, because they don't know history. They don't even know recent history. Never mind more ancient history. Oh, God. Grant asks, thank you, Grant, $50. What's your favorite non-alcoholic drink? Or alcoholic drink, I guess, one of the two. Look, I only drink, well, that's not true. I mainly drink three things. Every day, I drink these three things. Well, almost every day. I drink water. I drink a lot of water every day. I drink a lot of coffee every day. And 3 to 4 times a week, I drink a glass of wine in the evening. That's it. I don't drink any other alcoholic drinks. I mean, I might sip a mojito once a month. Once every 6 months, I'll drink a mojito or something. So I don't, and cocktails in Puerto Rico are spectacular. So it takes some fortitude not to be tempted by those cocktails. I guess, though, I don't drink orange juice. Way too much sugar in orange juice. Orange juice is not good for you because it's got huge amounts of sugar. Oranges are good for you. Orange juice, less so. Because it's concentrated. It's concentrated sugar. But I do drink, smoothies and so there's this one drink that I have, maybe I have it once a week. It's called Brazilian Thunder. And it's got acai, and it's got cumin, and it's got ginger, and it's got a bunch of other stuff. So it's a little, it's got pepper, so it's spicy, a little spicy. And it's got the acai. It's not very sweet because it's got no real sweetness in it. No sweetness in it. So any sweetness that it has comes from the fruit itself. And that one I really like. So I drink that. The other day I drank a really good protein drink with coconut water and I think it was whey protein or some other kind of protein powder, and then blueberries and a bunch of other stuff. So, but I don't drink. The other drink I drink is beet, carrot, and ginger. I like that combination. Beet, carrot, and ginger juice. It's also got sugar, but a lot less than orange juice. I like the ginger because it gives it a spiciness to it, and it's supposed to be good for the stomach. Anyway, completely subjective. Those are the kind of things that I drink, but mostly water, coffee, and wine. But yeah, ginger's good for you. I'll do a ginger shot once in a while. I'll do a turmeric shot once in a while. I try to do these things. You know, I like these things, so it's not like a duty premise where I have to, you know, because they're healthy. I hope they're healthy. I don't really know. There's not much I know about these things. From what I've read, they seem to be healthy, but hard to tell. All right, last question by Justin. Did you see the CCP's threat to shoot down Pelosi? Yeah, they're not going to shoot down Pelosi. The CCP does not want to go to war with America. They're not going to shoot down Pelosi. Although, if they shut down Pelosi, would America go to war? Because like half of America would be cheering and celebrating, and I'm not sure they'd want to thank the anyway. But that's how sick our politics is. Good for Pelosi to go into Taiwan. Never did I think I'd say anything positive about Pelosi, but good for Pelosi to go into Taiwan. Trump today, by the way, came out and condemned Pelosi for going to go in Taiwan because Trump is the ultimate appeaser of authoritarians. Right? All right, Shazbad. Coconut water is great for making ice for your smoothies because it is easier for your blender to chop it up. Oh, cool. That's good to know. I mean, I don't blend anything myself. I have an inoperable kitchen. I have a kitchen that is not meant to be used. So whatever fruit juice I get or whatever blended juice or anything like that I get, I buy. I go out and buy. Food, our kitchen is not for the production of food. It's for having a refrigerator you can open and for just being there and being pretty. It's a really beautiful kitchen. But it's not for production. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. I will see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock to talk about Dugan. I hope somebody shows up. And then on Sunday, we'll talk about beauty and art. Funny thing is, more people show up to hear about Dugan than they will to show up about beauty and art. That's the sad thing about the world we live in. One of the many sad things about the world we live in. Grant says, I would love a picture of your kitchen. I am considering taking some pictures of my home, including some of the artwork, to talk about in the art and beauty topic on Sunday. So Sunday will be Yoran's Rules for Life, art and beauty. Surround yourself with art and beauty, and I'll use some examples from my own home. So that'll be fun. I think you'll enjoy it. I'll have some photos ready, and I'll share some of those. All right, everybody, have a great